What's happening, guys? I'm Carl, and you're listening to Not Just Another Basketball Show. Today's 13th of June, exactly 1 year to the day that the Toronto Raptors sealed their first title in franchise history. We'll be talking about them a little bit later and looking back on their Game 6 against the Warriors. But as well as that, we'll be talking about the developing story of a large group of NBA players objecting the resumption of the NBA season. We'll be getting into that, as well as the expected start dates, such as the 1 day forward to July 30th that the 8-game play-in will begin, as well as the playoffs, NBA finals, things like that. And then lastly, we'll be kicking off the first part of my end of season award predictions. So what we'll be going through today is the MVP race, the Rookie of the Year race, Sixth Man, and Most Improved. And we'll get into the Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, and our All-NBA and All-Rookie teams in the next episode. So we'll kick off by starting with the recent story of a group of 80 or so NBA players objecting the NBA's resumption of the season. So, as first reported by Shams and Woj on Twitter, Kyrie Irving led a group of 80 or so players in a group call to discuss their feelings about the resumption of the season. And all players present on the call agreed that they did not want to resume the season and wanted to focus more on what's going on in the real world. And of course, that being the big issue of racism and all the protests and social reform that's going on currently. I wouldn't even just say in America, it's around the world, which is really, really positive thing to see. So there's a couple of quotes from Kyrie Irving over in this call that I want to cover. So he started by saying, "I don't support going into Orlando. I'm not with the systematic racism and the bullshit. Something smells a little fishy." So, that's completely acceptable. You have to remember, and I think we as fans sometimes, I wouldn't say forget, it's not something that you'd forget, but these are people. They aren't just these celebrities that we see on telly and they play sports for a living. They are humans. They have to go home to their families. They have thoughts and feelings just like us. And I think on that stage, it is obviously going to give you more of a platform to make a change if that's what you want to do. And, that's totally understandable coming from Kyrie Irving. He's a player that's spoken out an awful lot on mental health and change within the league. And it's not our character for Kyrie Irving to kind of speak out about this and want to make a change with the voice and the platform that he has. But on this call, also with him, included Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, KD, Donovan Mitchell, and actually what I've only read shortly before starting to record this podcast was Dwight Howard was actually one of the most prominent voices in this call and had agreed that he does not want to take part in the playoffs, that he'd rather focus on the more pending issues going on in the world today. So what this has kind of created in, at least I've seen it on Twitter anyways, is this polarizing view and discussion that's going on at the moment between the fans that just want the league to go on as normal and, anything that happens outside of that bubble in Orlando will still happen, but we want the sports back. But then there's the other side, the fans that, are kind of looking at it the same way as me and saying, yeah, like we're all sports fans. We've been missing sports since March now, and we want to obviously see this season finish and see who is crowned champion at the end. But if players want to object this and say, what, I'd rather use my platform in a different way, I don't think the time for basketball is now. There is bigger issues out there that we need to be talked about, need to be dealt with. That's completely understandable and completely acceptable. Now, what you all obviously have all seen is one of the biggest players that have objected to Kyrie Irving's call, and the point that he made was LeBron James. He decided not to attend the call and believes that he can still make an impact on society while being out in the court. And, LeBron has been such an influential figure on and off the court in, I'd say, throughout his whole career. Everything he's done with creation of a school and everything he's done for charities and giving back to his own community in Akron. He always has been the role model within the league, and players and people have looked up to him throughout the whole world. So I can't say I disagree with him either. It is really one of these things that it depends on what way you want to look at it. If people don't want to go on the court and they want to be out protesting, using their voice, using their platform, that's completely acceptable. But if people like LeBron want to say, well, I can make them changes, I can be as significant on the court as I will be off it, that's acceptable. We're living in a world where somebody has to be right and wrong, but it's not always that way. Like when we look at it, Kyrie has said that he's not going to play in this offseason. KD has said he's not going to play in this offseason. And when we look at the other group of players that I've mentioned, like obviously, yeah, you're going to have players like Carmelo Anthony who will be playing in the play-in tournament at least. You have Donovan Mitchell who would have been in the playoffs, Chris Paul who would have been in the playoffs. But okay, if they decide not to play, that's fine. But Kyrie and KD wouldn't have been playing anyways. They would have been ones that would have been on the sideline still using their voice, and they still can. It's but I just think it's going to be really interesting to see how the NBA approach this, because is it going to be a case that the players just point blankly refuse to play, or will some sort of agreement be made, say, listen, like we need to do something to make our voices more impactful and actually heard when we go back to playing basketball, that it's not just going to be 100% basketball. And that's completely fine. I think that's a completely fair thing to say and a completely fair thing to do. And I will say fair play to Kyrie Irving for having the guts to do what he's doing. It's not easy. Like he's constantly been a player that's been objected and ridiculed, but I can't quite put a name to who said it, but they said like he's one of the most misunderstood players in the whole world. So, if he wants to use his voice and his platform to make a difference and forget about basketball, do you know what? Well done. If that's what he wants to do, that's what he wants to do. And I think anybody that says differently or kind of looks down on him for doing that, well, that's your opinion. But I really feel like people in this position have this voice and have this platform and want to use it for change. And that's all he's trying to do. Okay, if he annoys a few people by bringing a few players with him and saying, do you know what, don't play, don't go back to the season, come with me. It's a minor inconvenience for an issue that's far bigger than basketball. So I think that's completely understandable. And whether everybody will see it like that is another thing. Anything can be said about that. But I really do think he's trying to make a difference. And yeah, what's been said is said. Yeah, so, but one thing I did see on Twitter, and I did agree with a lot of people that were discussing it, was there was a quote from Kyrie saying, "There's only 20 guys actually getting paid, and I'm part of that. Let's not pretend that is a tiered system. That is not a tiered system, purposely to divide us all." But somebody had said the 21st most paid person is Damian Lillard, and he's making $29 million. Now, I don't imagine Kyrie Irving had the full list of paid players sitting in front of him, but it is just something that's taken out of context and saying, all right, maybe it is a minor exaggeration. But, yeah, we all know that there's high paid players in the league and there's low paid players in the league. But there is an awful lot of high paid players. There is, like, if you're looking at each team, it's 30 teams. Each of them has max players. if you say each team has one max player, that's 30. Some teams have two. Some teams have players getting paid 10 million, 15 million, 7 million. You know, I don't kind of believe there's a tiered system there. I don't really see the point he was trying to make. But no, go him. If that's what he wants to do, well, I won't be standing around objecting that or saying anything bad about that. So moving on from that, is the proposed and the expected restart dates that the NBA has put forward. So this was first reported by Shams. So what we're looking at is, of course, like I mentioned, July 30th is the now target restart date for the NBA, which is obviously 1 day earlier than we were expecting initially. So the NBA is looking at a period of roughly about 16 days from July 30th to August 14th for the seeding games. August 15th and 16th for the play-in tournaments. August 17th for the playoffs to begin. Now, it jumps a little bit to August 30th is when the family and guests of teams arrive. August 31st to September 13th is the conference semifinals. September 15th to 28th is the conference finals. And we're looking at September 30th to be the start of the NBA finals. So, of course, like we know already, they're targeting the NBA draft to be on October 15th. And for the start of the season, obviously the 2021 season to start on December 1st. So, we have a really short off season there from the time the finals finish to when we get the first game of the new season. But I think that's expected. We have 8 teams that aren't competing now since March. They'll be eager to get back, and we talked a small bit about Lloyd Pierce and the Atlanta Hawks last week, making a comment on that. But no, that's completely understandable. Players going to want to get back out as soon as possible. An awful lot of teams that play in this the seeding and the play-in, they're going to have a long time off. It's really it's probably going to have an impact on teams that go far into the playoffs and obviously teams that are competing in the finals, but they'll turn it around. These are athletes, and like we literally had only said a few minutes ago, they are humans as well, but they love what they do. They'll want to get back out there as soon as possible. So with that, we're looking at a window of July, August, September, and a little bit of October. So we're talking, actually, what am I saying? July, sorry. August, September, a little bit of October. So we're looking at a period of obviously about 2.5 months like we usually do. And then literally just a month and a half until the start of the new season. So I think that's exciting. It's an awful lot to look forward to. We obviously all can't wait to just get back into breaking down games and seeing who's going to be, obviously big questions like who's going to be rusty, who's going to come back and just hit the ground running in game one. So no, it's a really interesting time. It's a really interesting period of play that we're going to be coming into. Obviously an awful lot of new things. So it's a really exciting time. And then I suppose just before we hop into part 1 of my end of season award predictions, I just want to quickly have a look back and at the 1-year anniversary of the Toronto Raptors' first NBA championship. So, of course, looking back last year, they'd beaten the Warriors 4-2. Taking the Warriors all the way to Game 6. It's crazy to look at 1 year and see how much has changed. It's Kawhi literally in Toronto for a year, but goes and gets them a championship and a finals MVP. But it wasn't a one-man show either. Looking back, obviously Pascal Siakam, he really stepped up. Freddie VanVleet, who, of course, when you look at them two, they've been instrumental this year. Now I know they've been in and out with injury quite a bit, mostly early on the season. But Pascal Siakam, he was in early MVP contention with the numbers he was putting up at the start of the season. Freddie's going to be looking to get paid. I don't think, is this year's contract year or is it next year? I think it's this year. So he'll be certainly getting paid whether Toronto want to bring him back or not. Of course, they're going to want to bring him back whether they can bring him back. But no, like it's crazy to think how much has changed. Like even with the Warriors, like everything that happened last summer was kind of it's a bit surreal when you think about it. Obviously, with the whole KD situation, Clay going down in Game 6, which obviously this day last year, and still out to this day. Everything that happened with Steph at the start of this season and him missing the majority this year. No, I think they will be back next year. You know, they're going to have a high pick in the lottery, have fully fit Steph back, fully fit Clay back. Draymond will play his role. They're going to have Wiggs. They will be back. Don't you worry about that. But I know I just want to kind of talk a little bit about that. It's 1 year to the day. But no, that was an exciting series, an exciting playoff run. It's so different to see a team like Toronto just kind of run through the East and not run into LeBron. And I think even with obviously Kawhi's shot against the 76ers will go down in history as one of the most infamous, well, not infamous for Philly, but one of the most famous shots in NBA history. Yeah, what a playoffs last year. So let's hop into the main part of the show, which is I wouldn't say early. Yeah, like I don't think an awful lot's going to change in the last few games to look back at, and obviously with an awful lot of teams, 8 teams not being able to play, I think what's been said and done for these award races is it's all over now. It's more just all of us fans debating and discussing it. So, like I had opened up the episode with, I'm going to be doing part 1 today, which will cover the 4 main awards. And then, well, I wouldn't say 4 main, but I'll be covering 4 awards today. And then in the next episode next week, I'll be covering the Defensive Player of the Year, the Coach of the Year, and going through my All NBA and All Rookie teams, and obviously all defense teams for the season. So let's get started with the MVP race. So 82 games is a long time. It's always a long NBA season, and narratives come and go, players come and go when entering and exiting just as quickly award races. I think for an awful lot of this season, we didn't really know what way it was going to go. So obviously we had James Harden. Of course, he's always going to be in an MVP race. We had Luka Doncic absolutely light the league on fire this year and be kind of in them MVP conversations all year. The numbers he's been putting up is ridiculous. We've had AD come and go at times at the Lakers. An argument could be made when Kawhi is playing. He's in MVP contention, but it's just about when he plays. But it's been an awful lot of players there. But of course, we know who the 2 main candidates for that award are, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo and LeBron James. So we'll get started with LeBron James. So LeBron, obviously in year 17, it's just absolutely incredible to think of a player of his age and a player of his experience still leading the league, still being in contentions for awards and leading teams into playoffs. Obviously last year being a little bit different, but I just think that's incredible. Like you're talking, LeBron's 35 years old. He's been in the league 17 years. I think if you look at the draft class that he was in, obviously Bosh retired with injury. Darko's been out of the league a long time. Dwayne Wade retired last year, and even at that, he was on his last knees. Carmelo has deteriorated a lot in the last few years. He's just a role player. But then you have LeBron, who is leading the team and is in MVP contention. It's absolutely incredible. But obviously this year, LeBron played an awful lot of his time at point guard, and that shows in his stats. He's having a career year in assists. He's averaging 10.6, which is it's amazing. And when you put that into comparison with his other stats as well, he's averaging 25 and a half, 8 rebounds, shooting a good efficiency, obviously, other than his free throws. He's been good offensively, good defensively. He's been a monster. And I don't think there'll be a player that durable as LeBron James to be coming into the league and setting it on fire and leaving the league still on fire. It's absolutely amazing. And obviously, when you look at what he's doing in LA, now, of course, with the help of Anthony Davis and co, they're the first seed now at the moment out west with a record of 49 and 14. You know, it's what can be said about LeBron that hasn't been said already. He's really in a league of his own. Well, let's leave that conversation for another day. But no, LeBron's incredible player, one of the best there's ever been. But when we look at who's competed with him for that award all year and who I believe will be the winner, deservedly so, is Giannis. So Giannis is going to be looking at a back-to-back, who obviously only a few players have done so, including LeBron, like I've just mentioned. But the Greek Freak, his numbers don't even speak to how good of a player he is. And that's absolutely incredible when I read out his numbers. He's averaging about 30, 14, and 6 on good efficiency from the field. His tree has been bad, but again, improving. His free throw is not so good. Defensively, he's a monster. He's been in defensive player considerations for forever, really. He's been in 2 all-defensive teams. He was in consideration this year. Now, I actually still believe he is in consideration. I don't think he'll win it. I don't think he deserves to win it, but he has been a defensive monster. And then, leading like a historically great team to 53 and 12 out east. There's a few holes in his game. Obviously, his most notable being his jump shot. I don't want to say the cliche of he doesn't really have a bag. There's an awful lot he can go to. But I think if he develops a little bit of a jump shot, how do you guard Giannis then? Because obviously we seen last year they'd taken a 2-0 lead over the Raptors, and then the Raptors just figured out how to stop him. They packed the post, packed the paint, and they stopped him. And obviously Kawhi was amazing defensively in that series the whole way out. But if you're looking at that again and say, how is he going to change that? If they run into someone like Philly, now Philly have an awful lot of question marks over them, but they're big. Like you're talking, they have Ben Simmons, who's about 6'10". They have Joel, who's easily 7 foot. They have Al Horford, who's 6'10", 6'11". Even to like Tobias Harris. Tobias is pretty big as well for his position. So like they're a big team. They're defensive. They can easily just pack the paint and pack the post again. And even when you look at Miami, like Bam Adebayo, he locked them up. Actually, I think they have a 2-0 lead over them this year. But no, obviously back to what we're talking about. I kind of went off on a tangent a little bit there. Giannis has been incredible all year. He's incredible last year. So I really do believe that he will be the winner of the MVP this year, and deservedly so. I think he just keeps getting better and better as the years go on. So then we look at the Rookie of the Year race, or lack thereof. The front runner obviously being Ja Morant. What an absolute sensational talent Ja Morant is. Looking at his stats, 17, 3, and 7 on great efficiency across the board. Leading a team like the Memphis Grizzlies, like a young rebuilding team, to the 8th seed, which nobody's seen coming. Now, I remember my predictions at the start of the year, and trust me, I was right with some, completely wrong with others. But Memphis I predicted to be exciting, to be good, but I don't actually think I had them in my playoff spots. But no, he's been absolutely sensational. He's been such an exciting player to watch with his bounce, with his dunks, with his ball handling. He's the full package. He's just as good as I thought he was going to be coming out of college, Murray State. Just think like, no, obviously this time last year we would have been looking ahead to the draft, but this time 2 years ago, he wasn't even on an awful lot of people's draft boards. He wasn't a highly scouted prospect coming out of high school, but he lit it up at Murray State, and he's lighting it up in the NBA. I really think he's a player that's could be looking at a Hall of Fame career. He's absolutely sensational, and the sky's the limit, really the limit for him. Now, obviously, we've had some other good rookies in the year, throughout the year. Some surprising ones as well, obviously, with the likes of Eric Pascal, Kendrick Nunn. But when you look at the lottery picks, RJ Barrett, he's been okay. Rui Hashimura picked it up later in the year. Still has an awful lot to prove, a lot to improve. But like PJ Washington, Brandon Clark, Kobe White, Tyler Hero, they've all played their roles really well. And actually, I'm saying Brandon Clark, even playing alongside Ja, he's been one of my favorite rookies this year. What a player! Again, he's a Swiss Army knife. What can't he do out on the court? I think he'll be a really good player going forward. But of course, as expected, even after all the injury, all the time out, Zion comes back late in the season. The Rookie of the Year award basically all but wrapped up. And Zion comes out of blocks, hitting 23, 7, and 2. On listening to these numbers, 59% from the field, 46% from 3. Now, obviously, a lot of that being in his first game. 64% from the free throw line. But on a team that at one stage in time, now I don't think I have the numbers in front of me. Do I have it? Yeah. The Pelicans at one stage were 8-23 this year, and I think that was before New Year's. And then when you look at what Zion's done since he's come back, a record of 10-9 in games that the Pelicans have a record of 10-9 in games that Zion Williamson has played. That's absolutely sensational. Like, what an improvement. So, I mean, what is exactly what we thought he was going to be. He's absolutely incredible. Obviously, I doubt he would have won Rookie of the Year if the season had gone on. But there kind of was an argument to be made that if he kept them numbers up, and somehow or some way the Pelicans made the 8th seed and knocked the Memphis Grizzlies out, could you have made an argument for Zion Williamson to get Rookie of the Year? It's a tough one. It's a really tough one because my gut says no. Obviously not. He's missed 60%, 70% of the season. But then you look at it on the other hand and say he came back and kind of made a team that had good talent and good prospects a winning team. Like I thought, plus like a 500 team since he came back. I don't know. It's fun to discuss and fun to debate and even think of what could have been. But no, I think obviously it's clear to say Ja Morant is the winner. He will be the Rookie of the Year, and deservedly so. He's been absolutely sensational. Then moving on to the Sixth Man of the Year. We've had players come and go with this one as well, and I think you could make some arguments, but the two clear front runners being Lou Will and Dennis Schroeder. Listen, I think if we're watching these award races, whenever they end up taking place at this stage, and Lou Will is awarded, I'll be happy. I won't be surprised. If Dennis Schroeder is given the award, I'll be happy. I won't be surprised. This could go either way. So let's start by looking at Lou Will's stats. He's averaging 18, 3 and 5 on 41% from the field, 36 from 3 and 86 from the free throw line. He has won this award 3 times, and I'd say one of the most impactful players, along with obviously Montrezl Harrell in LA, coming off the bench. Like, we talked in the past so much that the Clippers can throw at you. Like, you're talking, they have a starting 5 of... Geez, I think at this stage, you can say Pat Bev, Paul George, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, and Zubac. But then you have Lou Will, Montrez, Reggie Jackson, Mo Harkless, all coming in the second unit. He's gonna go. Well, I was gonna say he can go in the Hall of Fame. He could have a Hall of Fame career. Obviously, if he wins the 4th Sixth Man of the Year, that's incredible. I'd be surprised to see it, but I think an argument could be made there that he could be a Hall of Famer just on them accolades alone, especially if he goes out and gets a ring this year. But I mean, you look at Dennis Schroeder then, and he's averaging 19, 3 and 4, which is obviously 1 point higher, 1 assist lower, same rebounds, on slightly better efficiency. Obviously, 49% from the field is a lot higher, 38% from 3 is slightly higher, and 84% from the charity stripe, 2% lower than Lou Will. But then kind of what got Chris Paul his All-Star appearance this year, he's part of the OKC Thunder. Like, I think you take Dennis Schroeder out of OKC this year, and I don't know whether they make the playoffs. Like, I know Chris Paul has been absolutely instrumental to their success, but I mean, when Dennis Schroeder comes in, he's part of that 3-guard play that Billy Donovan is executing in OKC, and it just has been an absolute surge from the Thunder this year. And Dennis Schroeder has been not as instrumental, but just as instrumental as Chris Paul has. Between him, Chris Paul, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they've been absolutely incredible. So I'd be happy to let it go both ways, but to be honest with you, I'd say Dennis Schroeder could get it, somewhat because he has better stats, and obviously the narrative around being with the OKC. But I also think it's probably voter fatigue at this stage for Lou Will, and I hate to say it, but I'd say the media members voting for this, I think they'll be happy to see a new winner of this rather than Lou Will going out and getting his 4th. But like I said, I'd be happy and I wouldn't be surprised if either of them pick it up. But then coming into the last award that I'll be predicting today, and I think the most interesting conversation to have is our most improved. So, as is every year, there's an awful lot of players that go from A to Z, from being a terrible player to a great player, from being a role player to a star. It happens every year. Like, we look back last year, I think the conversation was between Pascal Siakam and D'Angelo Russell, who, of course, well, was Pascal Siakam an All-Star last year? Jeez, I'm actually doubting myself now. But I know D'Angelo Russell was. Of course, Siakam being a big part of the Toronto Raptors' success last year. But then this year, you're looking at, to be honest with you, I could be talking about 8 players here. And each player had an argument to be made. Like the ones that I've kind of omitted from these lists, or at least the two biggest ones, is Trae Young and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, I don't like when sophomore players win the most improved, because it's only natural that a rookie is going to improve from their rookie year to their sophomore year. But saying that, when you look at how... Well, actually, I'll remove Shea from this, because I did like Shea last year, and I think he's a great player now. But when you look at Trae Young was in a rookie of the year race last year with Luka Doncic, and both of them have just elevated this year. Like Trae Young he has to be close to 13-10, if I'm not wrong. And let me just double check that. Yeah, like 29.6 and 9.3 assists. That's absolutely sensational. That's a player that's going to have a long and successful career in this league. And I think he'd be that exception to, like I said, the rookie to sophomore improvement. But taking a look at these four players that we're going to discuss now, two of them are sophomore players. And, I'll get to them and kind of speak around why they should be in this contention, rather aside from any rookie and sophomore scenario. But I also have two players that I believe are in year 3, maybe year 4. I'd say 3 out of 4 players have been super all year. 3 of them being all-stars. The 4th player started off the season very well. Was a big surprise to everybody. Has kind of slightly dropped off as the year has gone on, but solely based on numbers, his improvement has been incredible. So we'll start off with the 4th player. And these are in no order of who I think will win it. To be honest with you, I'm still trying to make an argument for myself as I explain these numbers. So the first one is Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat. So with the MVP, an awful lot of time it's a narrative, and James Harden will be the biggest agreement of that it's always narrative. But with the most improved player, it's kind of always been argued and debated on what classifies someone as the most improved player. Is it solely just based on the numbers that they put up from one year to the next? Is it based on their success in kind of hand in hand with their team success? Is it based on, did they go from being a bench player to an all-star? So there's always so much noise and conversation around this award. But when you look at Bam, and like I said, there's comparisons. From last year to this, he's up 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. His effective field goal percentage is down 1%. And his win shares is up 1. So, of course, as we all know, Bam has been a great player this year for the Miami Heat. Arguably, I'd say arguably the co-star with Jimmy Butler. I think him and Jimmy have been the 2 leading players for that team. But then if you're talking about narrative, of course, he's a full first-time All-Star this year. He's led Miami to the playoffs with Jimmy, like I said. They've been a really great team all year. But then kind of one thing that stood out for Bam individually has been his defense. Like I mentioned earlier, his defense against Giannis was sensational. Kind of really locked him up anytime he played against him. So I think there's an argument obviously to be made for Bam being the most improved. Kind of ticks the boxes of numbers and narrative, and obviously not being a sophomore player. But then you move to the second player. And this second player is a sophomore player. But it's Luka Doncic. So, obviously, like I said, I don't really like when sophomores win. But Luka has been amazing. He was amazing last year, but his jump this year has been sensational. So you look at the numbers. He's up 7 in points. I'd say about 1.5 in rebounds, 2.5 in assists. His effective field goal percentage is up 3%, and his win share is up 3. The narrative obviously being he's leading the team, a historically great offensive team out west into the playoffs. He's been in MVP contention all year, and all of the records he's breaking. So, although I don't think it's very likely he will win, it just shows that there can be an arguable case made. He's been absolutely amazing. One of the best players in the league all year. But no, I think Luka has really, really shown that he's a future star of this league. And I don't think it'll be an awfully long time until it's just him and Giannis in MVP considerations. Then we move to the third player. So, ticks the boxes. He's a third or fourth year player. First time All-Star. For the majority of the year, he led the team, and even could be argued he still led the team when a big player came back, and that's Brandon Ingram of the Pelicans. So you look at Ingram's improvements. He's been improved by 6 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, about 1.5% on his effective field goal, and up 3 in win shares. So, like I said, he was the leader of his team for the majority. Obviously, they have now a young core in New Orleans. It's been basically him and Lonzo. I know obviously you have players like Drew Holiday and Derek Favors, things like that there, but Drew, I wouldn't say he's been the best player on this team. He hasn't been the leader. Don't get me wrong, he's been a leader, but he hasn't been the leader of the team. And I think BI has really stood up and deserving of an all-star appearance. And the numbers speak for themselves. He's been incredible all year. But then we move into this last player, and this last player is kind of to make a point of, is the most improved player the player that has the highest improvements in points, assists, rebounds, etc., or is it the narrative that goes with it? Now, again, the player is a sophomore player, so kind of has a bit of a question mark over it already. But I'm not going to call out the name just yet. I'll go through the numbers. So, this player has improved massively in terms of points, jumping up a massive 13 points per game. In terms of rebounds, he is up 2. Assists, he's up 5. Effective field goal percentage, 7%. And up 3 in win shares. Now, if you look at his totals for this year, he's averaging 18 points, 3.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, shooting 38% from the field, 37% from 3, 82% from the stripe, about 50% effective field goal. Now, if you look at them numbers compared to, like I said, the 3 previous players I've already mentioned, and you can exclude Luka there if you want and kind of make this whole argument between Bam and BI. His numbers his points have improved more than Bam and BI. His rebounds have improved more than BI, only 1 less than Bam. But keep in mind, this player that I'm talking about is a point guard. So even that is pretty sensational. His assist numbers have gone up higher than Bam and BI. His effective field goal, the same. And his win shares, more than Bam, the same as BI. Now, this player, like I said, their numbers are just a lot higher than the others. But you could argue that this player was the leader of his team. Maybe not in the dressing room, but on the court, this player is probably his team's best player. Devontae Graham is this player. Devontae started off the season on fire. Fair enough, he kind of fell off and kind of stabilized a little bit as the season went on. But you're talking Devontae on paper has been the most improved player. So that's kind of where this argument comes from, is do you give this award to the player that on paper is the most improved, or do you give it to the one with the narrative? If you pull just Devontae versus Bam, Charlotte Hornets aren't in the playoffs. They started off strong, fell off a little bit. They don't have any clear star. But then you look at Bam. First time All-Star. Co-star alongside Jimmy Butler in Miami. His defense against some of the league's best players has been sensational. And I think I already mentioned, he's a first-time All-Star. So who would you say is the most improved player then? Strictly by numbers, it's Devontae by far. I don't think there's a player in the league that has better numbers than him. But I think this year, I can't say for certain on other years, but I can definitely say this year it's going to really show, is it narrative or is it numbers? And, that's easier for us. We know MVP races aren't always about numbers. We've seen that plenty of times with James Harden, like I'd already said. Rookie of the year. Zion comes in and averages higher numbers than Ja, but he hasn't been here long enough. And the fact that Ja's kind of excelled Memphis to the 8th seed. A 6th man is kind of strictly numbers most of the time. But I think it's a really interesting case this year for the most improved, because like I said, these are just 4 players that I discussed. But on the list I was looking at, and when I was kind of going through the roster, seeing who would be the most improved player, it's about 8 players you can make an argument for. Like I said at the start of this, I'm still trying to convince myself who necessarily is the most improved player. I think my heart's telling me Bam. I think Bam is going to win the most improved player, because I just ultimately think narrative is important in today's league, and he will probably clinch that. But Devontae Graham has still been a massive improvement, and he is a great player, or a good player. But yeah, I think Bam Adebayo deservedly winning the most improved player of the year this year. At least that's the way I think it'll go. So, like I said, next week I'll be talking more about the defensive player of the year, coach of the year, and then be going through my all NBA, all defensive, and all rookie teams. So that's going to be all from me for this episode. I was giving it a think during the week, and I think until the NBA season starts, or at least until maybe, I'd even say until July, because obviously in the run into the start of the season, we're going to have a lot more news. But I think until then, I'll probably stick to a schedule of 1 episode a week. I'll probably aim for a Friday, Saturday release for this podcast. I think that's because although I do have an awful lot of ideas and a lot of interesting things I want to do with this podcast going forward, I think if we go 2 episodes a week, I'll be kind of burning out an awful lot of the, like I said, the interesting content and the ideas that I have. If I stick it to 1 until maybe even the first weekend in July, ramp it back up to 2 episodes, we start running into the restart of the season, have a lot more news, an awful lot of noise around the league then to be talking about. So I hope that's okay with you. I want to say again, thanks so much for the support that you'll have all shown since I started recording this podcast. Some of the messages you have sent has been just amazing. It's like I started off by saying all the way back in episode 1 was this was kind of just something casual and something fun for me to do. Now I'm currently recording a football podcast, the Spurs situation, which is a lot more accessible, especially here in Ireland. But it has been really incredible to see the support and the kind words by everyone that's reached out and everyone that's been listening to the podcast. So I really want to say thanks very much. It's a complete shock and totally unexpected. So I really do appreciate every single one of you. So that's going to be all from me. Like I says, we'll be aiming for another episode, a fresh episode next Friday or Saturday. Hopefully, probably Saturday morning. And yeah, so that's all from me. Have a great weekend. Have a great week. And I'll talk to you all again next week. See ya.